But I would say the self-belief is almost like self-esteem and confidence married into one term. So being able to say, okay, yes, I face this adversity, but because maybe a client hasn't come through or I haven't hit the revenue goals this month, doesn't mean that it's completely tied to my self-worth.
Welcome to the We.Are.Powerful podcast, celebrating the people and teams who make the changes in themselves to transform the results for others in the organizations and communities they are part of. I'm James Russell, an organizational change consultant and coach.
Hi everyone, my name is Alex Sellers. I'm the founder of Blue Heron Training. We're on a mission to help people and improve cultures wherever we go.
So look, we're going to be talking to some truly inspiring people with powerful stories to tell. So tune in, subscribe, to make sure you get alerts when new episodes are released. Welcome. We are joined today by Ideja Bajra, founder of Edvance AI, an award-winning consultancy helping organizations to get AI adoption right. I met Ideja at a talk she was giving on AI adoption last month, and given my keen interest with tech and AI, I had to get her on this podcast. So I'm delighted, Ideja, that you're able to join us. Ideja has been named a top 5 UK AI innovator, founder of the year, and highly commended in AI at Women of the Future. So, Alex, you've mentioned Brene Brown and Dare to Lead, and we have the real deal right here. So I'm really looking forward to this episode.
I'm so honored to be here.
Thanks, James. Lovely to meet you, Ideja. James rightly mentioned some of the people who've inspired me in the work that we both do, and Brene Brown's a big inspiration, especially your work around courage, vulnerability, and the shame that drives that. And I think from my perspective, it's all about how we can make really powerful change, both personally and in our work lives, and how the two kind of combine. And it's just, I find that her and others' work is really both inspiring and helpful in my day-to-day activities. It's a pleasure to have you here. And I think there's so much of what we want to explore and sort of talk about. To begin with, Ideja, could you just sort of let us know a little bit about what got you into this? How did you start to get into what you currently do?
I will always preface by saying it's never a linear journey, right? So I started in cell biology. I was, coming in with the dreams of coming out with a PhD, going into biotech, going down that route. And then as life has it, sometimes it takes you down a very different pathway to what you expected. And I ended up about 2 years into my degree seeing that AI was coming out. So one of my friends kind of showed me ChatGPT and was saying, this is a really cool tool. You need to start using it. It's going to change your life. And I didn't believe her until I actually got into it and started using it just every day, going past, the barriers of I'm not a technical person, I'm a bit nervous, etc. And at the same time, I was doing a biotech internship in one of those summers because that was the kind of field I wanted to be in. And whilst I was there, I saw that everything I was doing was automatable, absolutely everything. And I thought that could replace me completely. And I need to kind of make some sort of change about this. I need to step forward and put myself in a mindset that anything is possible now because this tool has democratized access to everything. And off the back of that, I started to get a lot of inspiration from other consultancy owners, doing a lot of YouTube video watching and seeing that actually I have a skill for helping people understand things really simply. And that then ended up turning into the company that I run today, Edvance AI. So very spontaneous. It was very much just following threads of what I was really good at and always having a sort of vision to make a positive impact in the world in some way without really knowing what I'm doing, but just really feeling that this is the right place for me because I've lived the experience and I want to help as many other people do the same.
And there, you said you don't look at things in a linear way. Would you say you trod the path less trodden in terms of leaving university? And it doesn't sound like it was a traditional textbook route into industry.
So I ended up actually running the company at the same time as university. So I graduated in July from cell biology, and then at the same time was managing my dissertation, coming down to London to do client presentations. I think it was the most hectic 2 years of my life, but just the best ever. So definitely not linear at all, but it was more so about feeling what is right for me because I knew that I wasn't really made for a 9 to 5. I wasn't made for a corporate job because I felt as though going into different internships, I loved the work culture, but I didn't necessarily feel as though I was contributing in a way that I wanted to. I wasn't making the positive impact I knew I could on a bigger scale. So I always had the vision that I would not be going into a 9 to 5.
And Ideja, give us an idea of the timelines on this, from idea to where you are now.
Yeah. So ChatGPT came out in 2022 in November. And I remember that because my best friend walks into my bedroom and goes, "You need to try this tool out at university." And I was like, okay, this is very strange. Let's try it. Let's see what's going on here. And then fast forward to August 2023 was when I did that biotech summer internship in Paris. Loved it for about 2 months. And then I kind of came away feeling a little bit defeated. And that's when I got actually a spontaneous email in my inbox saying there's a really cool Women in STEM business accelerator happening in London. You don't need to know anything about starting a company. You just need to be in STEM. Come in on our accelerator, try it for 6 months, and we'll give you support, fundraising, etc. to kickstart off the ground. And then 6 months after that is where I had the idea for Advance, and it ended up winning the top prize, which I was so happy about. And then since then, I've been running into some incredible people, collaborating with other professionals. But yeah, now I'm into it full time. So
That's amazing. I think there's something in that about the difference between sitting back and planning and thinking and actually doing things, taking opportunities, seizing moment. I think there's a lot in there. So what, Dave, just again for us and for the listeners, what are some of the challenges that you've experienced in your sort of few years of growth that we've been talking about?
quite a lot. I could write a very long, probably a dissertation long of the challenges at the end of it. But I think how I combated all of those to go to that point first is by surrounding myself with mentors. Absolutely the most crucial thing I've ever done is just find people on LinkedIn, reach out to them if I had an interest in what they were doing or if there was a company they worked for that I really liked, and just asking, because 9 times out of 10 they're waiting to be asked to support someone who's starting the journey. But to go back to the challenges, I think the first biggest obvious one was me being non-technical and trying to immerse myself into a space that is honestly filled by tech bros. Like it still is in this day and age. Like there's so many. If you go to any of these conferences, you would just see everyone has all the, Google hoodies and caps, and you're like, okay, I don't know if I belong here.
What's that term? Tech
Tech
bros?
bros.
Tech bros.
I haven't heard that.
Yeah. That is my favorite word to use. And I would also say being able to start a business without having a formalized business background. I'd never studied finance, econ, business, but
Yeah.
I prefer to learn by doing,
Yeah.
And I discovered that quite later on after I started this without knowing what on earth was going on. So it's just like picking it up pieces, along the way. And there's been honestly any challenge you can think of with anyone starting a business, like thinking about how do I scale a team? How do I even lead people? How do I give someone a task when I don't even know what the task is myself? And then being able to go through training courses and finding everything I needed online and using AI to train me how to lead. That was one of the biggest things. So any problem you can think of, I faced it, but we came out on the other side.
There's a question in there, James, in a second about AI training how to lead. I'm going to explore that in a second, but not just yet. I think
I can see the question forming.
it's all there. It's all there. And I think there's certain things that, through my experience, there's certain things which is purely experiential, aren't there? There's things that you cannot teach yourself unless you have experienced it, whether that be the highs or the lows that come with it. And I think that certainly my experience is to be able to do that, we need to have a really open mindset, understand kind of what we don't know and be willing to learn from every element, right?
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think part of it was going in not with a naive mindset, but almost like not knowing what's there until you tried it. Because if I had known that everything that I would go through in those 2 years, I don't know if I would have gone in with the same mindset. So it was more kind of being blind to what's actually out there because I've never done it, never seen people around me who started any sort of AI agency. And I thought, I can do this, why not? And then the more I kind of went into the rabbit hole of the AI tutorials, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to need to hire like the entirety of an AI development agency to help me right now because I don't know what's going on, So it's about having almost like a delusional sense of self-belief to the point where it causes you to take inspired action to materialize into the reality that you're envisioning in your head. So it is very much about picking up all the little fragments that you see and just running with it. And then, of course, surrounding yourself with amazing partnerships around you, having mentors, just making sure that you're building the ecosystem that allows you to grow and thrive.
I mean, that sounds like an amazing kind of formula to take, but I can hear people sort of thinking, saying as they're listening to this, but, surely that there must be moments of doubt, or you must be human. There must be kind of human emotions and fears and doubts that creep in there somewhere, or do you not suffer from that at all?
Oh, I mean, definitely. In the beginning, I'm going to be honest, I didn't necessarily until I actually got into doing the work and serving the clients. And then I was like, oh, now I understand. Because before it was all just, here's, how to create a company name, here's how to register in company's
Yeah.
house, all of this. That's quite an easy admin way, right?
Yeah.
But then taking a step back and actually saying, let me execute on it. Yeah, that was absolutely terrible. And there were moments where I thought, okay, am I really qualified enough to do this? And that then made me realize that the kind of purpose and mission of the company wasn't aligned to me in the very beginning. So I was building AI solutions for educational technology companies. And off the back of that, I thought, I don't even enjoy coding. So what am I doing building these solutions for clients? And then like 6 months later, I had a moment where I thought, what do I really enjoy doing? It is talking to people. It's being there in person. It's giving workshops. It's running the exact journey through to an individual who's never learned how to use AI for them so they can get started. It's literally taking my journey, packaging it, and putting it out there. And that, for some reason, has made me incredibly aligned. And I had not really faced any sort of this like adversity in this side, but in the first half of running the business, definitely. Now it's more just about growth, scaling, team, etc.
I'm going to jump in. I picked up on a couple of things that you've said just now, Ideja, in terms of the personal elements. You mentioned the term envision. That's a term that I love, to be able to have something that guides you, that directs you. I think there's some people out there who are great at visioning, and there's some people who really struggle. But I think everybody can have that sense of what it is that they're trying to achieve, even if it's fairly nebulous at the time. It's the feeling, a calling, a drive. It kind of comes, doesn't it? It kind of comes as you start to explore and start to build a business. That idea of envisioning. Then you talked about this sort of, you mentioned delusional sense of self-belief, and I love your wording there as well. Can you just sort of explore a little bit more what you mean by your sense of self-belief? What does that look and feel like to you?
It's quite an intangible concept. So it's a feeling. I don't really visualize actually. I feel things a lot because I don't see visuals. So I think that's been another superpower where I can almost collapse the time to what I see because I can feel through it rather than just actually kind of seeing it and every day thinking about it. So that's one major part. But I would say the self belief is almost like self esteem and confidence married into one term. So being able to say, okay, yes, I face this adversity, but because maybe a client hasn't come through or I haven't hit the revenue goals this month doesn't mean that it's completely tied to my self-worth. So being able to separate what's happening in the business to what you have, and at the same time knowing that whenever you have these kind of anxiety feelings or nervousness, I really just see them as butterflies inside of excitement. So it's almost reframing, being able to take any emotion you feel and shifting it to a more positive element. So that has helped me so many times for so many things I've done.
I remember my
Thank you.
son when he used to do gymnastics, and he was probably maybe 7 or 8. He went to a competition and he was standing there about to start his floor exercise, and there was maybe a few hundred people watching in this big sports arena place. And I said to my office, I said, Charlie, how was that? And he goes, it was really weird, Daddy. I felt this funny sensation in my tummy. And I said, what do you think that was? And he went, I just thought it was excitement. So I love what you said there about reframing. He didn't know that what butterflies were, and he didn't know that that was associated with sort of nervousness, but he just, as a child, not knowing that, he just took that as a source of energy. And I love what you just said there about reframing.
Yeah, that's exactly how I see it actually. It's like almost going back to those terminologies and those concepts that you loved as a young child and being able to bring them forward and say there's nothing wrong with that. It's just reframing it at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a really powerful tool, isn't it? Going back to Brené Brown again, she has two values that she talks about. Only two values that she works towards. She says that every other value kind of subordinates the two values that she works to, and one of those is courage. And I really relate to that, and I don't think it's the courage to charge off an attacker. I think it's the courage to take personal and interpersonal risks, and the courage to feel. I think that's it, isn't it? It's the courage to feel. James knows me well. James and I are very different, and I've experienced that sense of fear and anxiety and optimism and hope. And I think she has a very famous TED Talk, The Man in the Arena. I think the key message that comes out there is that anybody who is out there challenging themselves and putting themselves forward is feeding their self-worth, despite the fact that, and I loved what you said about that link between business failure and things not going so well, and it seeping into our sense of being able to perform, being able to do what we do, that sense of self-worth. And I think that's really hard for people, isn't it? To be able to sort of sort of pull apart the two and say, hold on, well, this didn't work. It doesn't mean I'm not good or I don't know what I'm doing. It just means that I've tried something and it hasn't worked. And that's where her concept of, if you're not in the arena, I'm not listening to your criticism. If you haven't done that, I'll be the one to make the decisions around this. And again, this links back to what you said earlier about great mentors and partnerships and having good people who'll challenge your thinking. Because I think that reframing in your own head is amazing and it's a powerful thing. But sometimes you can get locked into this kind of cycle and you need other people around you to challenge you and to say, hold on a minute, have you looked at it like this?
Absolutely. And I think that's the most fascinating part, because the more I'll step away and kind of retreat and do more of like an isolation phase, the more I start to crave people, the more I start to want to actually be challenged and kind of be out there, be really questioned and put to test in a way, because you can't really solve problems just by spiraling about them in your head. You can, I guess, journal them, which I do a lot, just to process thoughts, but then you have to go out there and test that, because it's almost a case of, are you healing yourself or are you hiding? It's very easy to mix both of those.
And Alex talked about being in the arena, and Ideja, has it felt like you've been out there, putting yourself out there, and have you had any of those sort of dissenting voices or people sort of challenging you or trying to knock you back along your journey?
Yeah, I think more so in person. I ended up actually facing quite a bit in my early stages of my journey, almost, I want to say ageism, if that is the correct term for it,
yeah.
where there were a lot of individuals who would say to me, you're too young to do this. Like, why are you doing this? You don't really have not the skills, because they acknowledged I had the skills, but they said you don't have the maturity or the experience. Go work in a big four consultancy firm first, learn how they work, and then spin out your own thing off the back of that. And I think understandably so, I took it with a pinch of salt, because I did really see that I wouldn't necessarily want to trade lives with them. So I wouldn't want to take advice from someone that I don't want to trade lives with. That's my first thing. But the other part was a sense of understanding that I've done it for a reason, and I feel called to have this impact and to do this business because I've lived the experience myself. And I think the voice just needs to be amplified through me. So I'm the channel to get it out there, pretty much. And that, I guess, self-belief, purpose really drove me to see past all of these, negative comments. And when people ask me to reflect on this, I almost forget that did happen. So I'm sort of like, this is interesting, because it didn't really impact me as much as it could have because of that self-belief, I would say.
And that is an inspirational example there, because I can now see why we have these sayings like taking things with a pinch of salt, letting it wash over you, that ability that you have to not let certain things get to you, even though you've got that highest degree of feeling. Some high kind of feeling people could really take that and it could knock them back and they could ruminate over it and it could really affect them. But to have that ability to take it with a pinch of salt and just say, actually, I'm not going to let it deflect me on my journey, that's such a superpower.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think it helps that I've always been surrounded by very strong parental figures in my life. So even if I did have moments where I was maybe a bit wobbly or kind of something did knock me back, my parents would always just step in and just be like, but no, that doesn't define you. Because we've told you from when you were tiny that you can do whatever you put your mind to. And this is why you're able to do all of these really cool things, because you've had that environment. So why are you listening to people who were never in your arena, as you said earlier? So it's a combination. I think it's all pieces of a puzzle, right? Parents really do play some of the hugest roles, because if my parents didn't work incredibly hard, I wouldn't be able to do this, So it's a combination of it all coming together in the end, I believe.
I love that.
Amazing. Love it.
I think it would be good to pick up on that point. Yeah, we can't choose our parents, but they're amazing that you had that support from them.
So, how, for people who are perhaps less trusting of others, how can they form those partnerships and those mentorships to work out who actually is in the ring? Because I think that's a big issue for people, isn't it? You put your trust in the wrong person, and people who struggle with trust, sometimes they're the ones who can get lost in their own cycle, and that's when they struggle to make that powerful change.
But your question there, Alex, around how do we not pick our friends, associates, mentors, whoever, but maybe choose the ones that we listen to and we pay attention to, and those that we just say, actually, yeah, you have an opinion, but actually I'm going to let that go. I'm not going to let it kind of form part of my script.
Yeah, I think in terms of that, it's quite a difficult one because I think I've naturally gravitated towards certain people. I've always just had that ability to know when someone is almost right for me, if that makes sense. So all of my friends, all of anything along the years has been just what I've put out, I've got back. That's how I've always seen it. But I think for people who are not so trusting, maybe, and that's totally understandable, especially in this day and age, I think it becomes more about spending some time alone and actually understanding who you are, understanding away from everyone's voices and everyone's opinions, what do you really want fundamentally out of life, out of relationships, friendships? What do you value the most, and where are your hidden gifts? And I think that comes out with honestly using AI. I will bring it in now because I think part of it is being able to use AI as a tool that you can have as a journal prompt. So I think journaling or just processing out loud in voice notes to yourself is how you overcome these big emotions, and you want to be able to step back and say, okay, I need to feel the feelings, I need to understand kind of what my thoughts are, put them to paper, and then step away from them. And then you start to realize that people who come back and reach out to you and support you are those that genuinely care about you. And you'll start to build the muscle of being able to allow certain people into your ring. That's how I would suggest doing it. And then you have the journaling as well, that I think is a huge tool.
Yeah, I work a program outside of my public image, and what you've just said has got a lot of synergy with the program that I work. So I would agree with everything that you've just said.
Oh.
We've got to get things out of our internal space, and I think journaling is a very powerful way to do that. And it certainly helped me. And then to slowly, we keep coming back to those themes about purpose and values and drivers, and there's a lot of benefit to spending some time and just reassessing and reworking and finding those points at which we don't want to surround ourselves by people who are too much like ourselves, because where's the growth, right? I need someone to help challenge my thinking, because it's my thinking sometimes that gets stuck. But then if I can align values and a sense of purpose, I mean, I know that James and I are incredibly different people, as are other colleagues that I work with in my business, but every single one of us is a professional and will challenge ourselves to think differently. James got me a brilliant Christmas present, which is my shirt saying, hold on, let me just stop and overthink this. And my wife said, man, he knows you. It was brilliant, right?
Can I just point out, just to make this even worse, Alex bought me an amazing hamper with food in it, so there's a slight imbalance of the give and take.
I'm expecting something big next year, by the way. But I just wanted to jump in there because I really, really resonate with what you've just said. I think it's really important for people to be able to walk away from this podcast with something that they can tangibly go away and help them continue their journeys. I love it. Yeah.
Amazing. No, I think genuinely it comes down to really figuring out what you actually enjoy doing. So almost doing a life audit, taking a fresh page on a notebook, a fresh pen, and just start writing down, what do you actually like doing in your life? What do you care about? Who actually gives you energy after you've spoken to them, and who drains you? It's all about understanding if you feel positive after you've left or negative, and then you start to almost build a circle of specific individuals or business ideas or just a talent that you could eventually monetize, because ultimately it's about finding the ikigai. So the whole Japanese term of being able to see where all of your kind of passions, contributions to the world, and positive impact align as a Venn diagram in the middle that you can be paid to do and to execute in the world. And without realizing it, I think I figured that out just by doing it and not really sitting and thinking. But it is about getting the ideas, taking inspired action off the back of those, and having that bias and that high agency to move forward. Because otherwise you'll just keep looping and spiraling.
Bias and high agency to move forward. Love that. That's a great line. There, it's Alex. We're going to have to talk about AI at some point. I know you're chomping at the bit. I'm really interested. The point that you talked about AI was probably would surprise many, because you talked about it at the point of helping you to understand feelings and journaling. And actually, there's an amazing founder called Jody Cook of an AI coaching platform called CoachVox that I'm testing and helping them to develop, which is effectively how, as a coach, can AI kind of create an AI version of me that can be complementary and run alongside me as the human coach to act as an accountability partner, or something that someone can interact with when, yes, they can contact me, but they can have access to this coach 24/7 and ask it whatever they want. And she shared a prompt for us to use if we were feeling brave enough to. And it was effectively saying to ChatGPT, assess what I've been doing for the last 6 months and don't be nice, be really critical, challenge me hard, and actually tell me where you think I could be more effective and where you think I'm procrastinating or spending too much time. And it's fascinating. But in terms of that, once you give it the permission to be candid and direct, wow, as an accountability partner, it's giving you that brutal honesty based on the facts that it's seeing. And again, I can choose to ignore it or take it on board. But as an accountability partner, I find it so useful, especially being a self-employed, I want to say one-man band. I'm not, because I work with Alex and I work with lots of other amazing people, so I don't feel alone. I have colleagues that I work with, but it just sits alongside that. So I'm really interested in exploring that thread of AI being that partner that supports us, because not everyone feels that way.
I agree. I think in terms of AI use cases, because the hype has inflated how much AI really is doing for the workplace, we're almost forgetting what it's doing for us as individuals. So everyone has access to artificial intelligence in however they wish to use it, essentially. Like if you have a phone, you have internet, you have AI onto there. It's honestly just like a personal choice to use it for a personal sense. And I think we're forgetting about the fact that AI is sure being used in the workplace, but 70% of all of the queries that were put into ChatGPT for the past 2 years were personal related. So I looked through all the data, and it was in relation to studying, so how students were actually able to turn their kind of revision material into usable formats, how young people especially, so I think it was 80% were under 35 years old, were actually going to ChatGPT as a therapist. So they perhaps didn't really have the infrastructure at home, or they couldn't afford a therapist, so they would go on to ChatGPT and they would use that, and that became the anchor point for them. And of course there's a lot of dangers with that, but if you need a quick fix and you need to speak to someone, you don't have someone there, that is there as the initial first step. Obviously it shouldn't be there for a long time. And there's so many other use cases. I mean, journaling prompts, learning how to actually run a business. I think I would not be where I am today if I didn't have AI as my, as you said, accountability partner, because it taught me everything I needed to know. I didn't really know how to do business finances, like cash flow and P&L statements and all of this, until I would just go into ChatGPT and say, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. I need you to act as a marketing professional or a business generalist or someone who has the knowledge already. You need to give it to me in these brutally honest formats. Tell me exactly what I need to do. What am I doing wrong? And then at the bottom, type yes for me to send you all the information. And then I became very comfortable with using AI in kind of a more, as you said, candid sense. So being able to just go onto the voice chat function and talk to AI as if you're talking to a friend. And it sounds very creepy, just to put it out there. Like, it doesn't sound very normal, but if you start to kind of remove the barriers and the blocks and the limiting beliefs around technology, you become, I guess, more adaptable to the change that's happening, and you open out. Then you're a little bit more excited to go out there, and you kind of push past all the barriers that were put there before. Because I think especially if you're not technical, it's scary, right? Like AI is a scary, scary thing, but if you see that it's actually helping you at home and in your personal life, you start to see the big impact it can make in the workplace, I think. So those are interconnected for sure.
Go on, Alex, do you want to chime in? What's your perspective?
So just for clarity and for all the listeners, I am not anti-AI. I'm still exploring it. I'm learning it. I, like many other people a couple of years ago, jumped on the ChatGPT bandwagon and kind of just thought, wow, this is stuff that would take me hours, and I'm not hugely creative, could just be condensed. But I jumped straight in and then sort of started to pull back, and you can see that there's like different usages for AI. People who use it as a time-saving device and to basically stop the hard process of creativity, right? Which I'm 50-50 on. But I'm very, very interested in the ability that we can use it to kind of synthesize and support and use as something that elevates us in terms of our ability to think, right? And to act and to feel. I do see the positivity there. And I know James was referring to, we talked about this earlier. So my kids are 16 and 14, and it's really interesting listening to them talk. Now, they are very against anything AI, very against it. And they're not technophobes, right?
Okay.
So, they're perfectly technically capable. My daughter is quite artistic and brilliant with people and languages. My son is slightly more scientific. And they use AI. I don't think the AI that they're worried about is the AI that comes into everyday life. But from their perspective, and the question is this, how would you help sort of challenge the mindset of perhaps younger people who are worried about AI stripping jobs, stripping roles, making life actually harder for them? Because that's a real thing for them. That their anti-AI feeling is based around fear that they're, my daughter is 16 looking at what she can do now when she's 25, and she's ticking things off going, well, AI is going to do that, AI is going to do that, AI is going to do that. So it creates a barrier. So what would you say to those younger people?
Yeah, actually, my sister is the same. So she's 19. She's into graphic design. We literally had this debate when I was back home in Kosovo last week, where she was saying, "Look, I know you love AI and we love you, but we don't love AI. Like we don't know how to interact with it. We're scared. We don't know what's going to happen." I think the first thing is understanding the difference between hype and reality. And the AI that we have right now, in all honesty, is just a more glorified text predictor. It's not necessarily reaching those capabilities of being able to infiltrate every single kind of company and every single role, because take a look at Deloitte, for example. They actually removed 100,000 people from their roles only to reinstate them 2 weeks later because they saw the AI agents weren't as effective. So it is about understanding that change is going to happen because we think we're heading towards AGI, so that's artificial general intelligence, when in reality, we are about a decade or more out of that because the hype doesn't live up to the actual standards of what AI is producing for us. On the other hand, I would say it's not about AI coming in to replace roles necessarily. It's actually democratizing the learning and the abilities of people to step into these roles now. So I think you won't necessarily be replaced by AI. That's not the notion. It's actually the individuals who have picked up AI. They will be the ones that are going to get those roles before those that haven't, because we have to be AI literate as an entire society. And it is scary. It's frightening, especially if you've never had to learn anything technical related. But the same thing happened with the internet, and the same thing happened with the Industrial Revolution. And honestly, even the calculators, like they thought in the 60s or previously before that, we'd never need to actually do maths again, but we still do have non-calculated papers in schools. So it's understanding that this is part of a bigger cycle, and this does happen every odd few years where we're calling for a huge shift in the way we're interacting and we're working. And actually, you'll come out on the other side if you are a generalist and you do have those abilities to pick up technology whenever, is possible, but also understand that actually it's not the end of the world because AI is just a tool and it's there to enhance the tool stack you already have. And that tool stack comes from your creativity, being scientifically minded, honing down on the gifts that you have and using AI as an amplifier rather than a replacement.
Yeah, I love that.
And I link it back to what you were saying earlier there around making sure that things don't define you and having that agency and I'll say confidence, but it's like you say about maths and calculators. We still do maths. We still teach maths. I remember my dad when sat-nav came out and I was driving and he was saying, but son, don't just blindly follow the sat-nav because it might take you to completely the wrong place. You still want to know roughly where am I going, whether it's me or someone in the passenger seat that's giving me directions. You're still having a conversation and you're still sense checking we're going in the right direction. And I still have that agency and control, and I think that's up to me. That's up to me to decide. Actually, I know where I'm going with my business, what I'm doing as a coach, but I'm choosing to access the capabilities of AI to help me to be a better coach, to help me to be a better mathematician, a better business person. You talked about journaling earlier, so it can help us to sort of live a healthier life as well. And I think for me, that's the key. It's don't let it define what we do. Use it as something to augment and support what we do. I still feel in control and I don't feel like it's going to take stuff away from me. But
I
maybe that's
agree.
just my mindset on it.
No, I think that's the correct way to see it. I think it's also allowing for more creativity because, as you said earlier, it's almost automating parts of the work that we do on day to day that can be more mundane. But obviously, not replacing that part completely. You're not going to copy and paste exactly what Gemini AI gives you for an email, but you'll use that to give you ideas and to help you brainstorm and to help you push forward. Because I think that's the crucial part. It's being able to differentiate between seeing AI as something that's genuinely going to take over everything you do and actually seeing AI as the tool, as for what it is, realistically. It doesn't have those human based capabilities, it doesn't think, it doesn't feel, it cannot take over what you're doing because you cannot be replaced. And that's the most important thing.
But Alex, back to your children, and there'll be millions of others that have similar feelings. We can't just say to them, "It'll be fine. Have agency, have control." You can't just tell them that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole piece there. I was just thinking there that the challenge itself isn't AI. Like you said, I loved your analogy between AI and the internet, right? And look where we are now. I think the challenge is in education, support, mentorship about what you can do and how you do it. I'm pretty sure that, some of the things that frustrates my kids is that, there's a whole bunch of, I guess, kids that will use AI to not supplement thinking, but think for them, right? And I think that's where the education and the mentorship piece comes in, so perhaps more voices like yours and other people like you who've got a deeper level understanding. Maybe there's something in that in terms of supporting, the development of kids throughout schools and throughout early university years as well. I went to university in the 90s, I'm showing my age, and we had a similar thing about, how you research, right? How did you use that? This is before the internet. We didn't even have that. And I certainly think that there's a piece around how we can use AI to expand and to almost increase our humanity and our ability to think and write. And
Yeah.
perhaps there's some
That's
lacking voices
incredible.
in that space at the moment.
Yeah, that was actually one of the biggest barriers I faced because I would give a lot of client workshops, speak to a lot of students at universities, and just collect as much data as I could in relation to how everyone feels about AI because I did feel that the literacy point was one of the main factors. That was my issue in the beginning. I didn't know anything about the technology, so I upskilled on that way. So it is the upskilling element that is crucial. Then I came down to the idea that if you trace it all the way back, we have never been taught how to deal with this type of technology before because those who are teaching us in the education space also have no idea. So we're all in the same boat ultimately, where the only real solution out of this is to build an entire AI literacy curriculum for, school age children in every single nation in the world, just like how the UAE has started for, I believe it is students between 4 to 18 years old are all, forced to basically learn about AI in their school systems. And I think that is the missing point because we are taught then, obviously with the internet when it came out, the calculators, we've been learning those along the way. If we had that for AI and if that was implemented faster and holistically, we would understand how to use the technology. And I can almost 70% guarantee you that we would not be having these issues today. But that does come down to the fact that none of us really necessarily know what's going to happen with the technology because we can't predict what the next phase of AI is going to look like. We don't even know if AI will be the buzzword in 5 years' time. It will be infrastructure, but who knows what's coming next? So that's the core part. The main component is education, I would say.
And I'll link this back to what you said earlier around ageism, because this is sort of an irony here. You talked about surrounding yourself with those people and those voices, and you talked about mentors. And I just think there's something for people in organizations around how do we combine, I don't want to steal your word today, how do we bring those young and old voices? I loved what you said around that.
Yeah, I think with that, it's about understanding that the older voices, the more senior team members, will have the wisdom. They know how this works because they've probably lived through multiple hype cycles of different technologies coming out. So they can see the patterns almost, but they don't necessarily have that maybe energy to keep innovating, keep going again and again and again. Whereas the young people coming in now have a hunger to make change and impact, and they really want to live out their full purpose, even through work nowadays. So a combination of both will mean that innovation just continues to increase because you have the kind of high agency young individuals willing to make change. And then you have the more senior members who have the wisdom and can navigate the potholes instead of going into those mistakes. The young people can then see, okay, this is how we move forward because someone has done it before us. It's the combination of both brains.
Yeah, and I think you've hit on a hugely important theme at the moment that crosses, our conversation now, but also goes into society as a whole. And it's not picking up on differences and separating ourselves. It's about making the best of what everybody has to offer, right? And I think that we see that in organizations all the time. Some of the things we experience, and this is my belief is this is fueled by fear. So we see the more wisdom-based model, perhaps people who are slightly older, although that's not a given, but people who've got a certain way of doing things. And then there's a lot of fear around different generations coming up. And you mentioned it about people wanting to live through their purpose in the workplace. Like, that's a hugely different perspective to people of my age, where you worked for certain reasons. But the two aren't, they don't just operate on separate tracks. They're part of the same thing. And I think if you take that and put it into a wider socioeconomic kind of conversation at the moment, you see a lot of this happening politically and in division that we have. And I'm not going to go here, James, don't worry. But I think that's the right conversation to have, is how can you combine both amazing perspectives and skill sets in the workplace?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's also about a rise in intrapreneurship, so not even entrepreneurship anymore.
And just for clarity, when you say intrapreneurship?
Yeah, so it's essentially entrepreneurship, but inside a company. So you're starting almost like a mini business or a project inside a bigger corporate. But I think now it's about the younger people saying, okay, we know we have a skill set and we know we can be a freelancer on the side, or we can start our own kind of innovation within our team because that's how we live our purpose. But actually, we really like a 9-to-5. We like the structure, we like the stability, and we really love the culture. Why would we then spin out our own thing if we don't have a sustainable ground to walk on? And I think that is the perfect marriage of the two mindsets coming together, particularly in a corporate space, but also in startup spaces. It's vice versa, I would say.
Okay. So Ideja, a question that I ask everyone: what would you say to your younger self, knowing what you know now and what you've experienced?
That you don't need to have it all figured out, because no one does. It's actually just about picking up the threads that come out in front of you, following those, and understanding that it all happens for a reason, is what I believe. And that once you really feel like you're living your purpose, every single day feels aligned and you love what you do. You just have to fight through the weeds to get to the end, I would say.
Beautiful. I love that. Well, Ideja, thank you so much for making the time to talk to us. If people want to get in touch or to read more about what you do, what's the best way for them to contact you?
LinkedIn. Yeah, LinkedIn is kind of the main platform I use, so just Ideja Bajra on there. But I also do a lot of TikTok videos, so if you're into AI hot takes, it's just ideja.ai. Feel free to reach out.
Alex, do you do a lot of TikTok videos?
Yeah, no. Nope.
Maybe that's where AI can help.
We had this conversation over Christmas. I love watching films, it's a passion. And I was kind of looking at the family and everybody was on their phone whilst watching a film. And I just I made the point. I said, when was the last time we actually watched a film? And we got a bit of enforced phone putting down there. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. I find it's inspirational and it's relatable and it's human. Yeah, brilliant. Loved it.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate it. And thank you to both of you for finding me and for reaching out and all of this stuff. I'm so honored. And I love what you guys are doing. I'm going to be sending this podcast to so many people. So if you get random viewers from Kosovo, you just know it's come from me.
Thank you so much. And for people listening, check out We.Are.Powerful.org for more content and useful links. Contact us if you'd like to get involved, but please take inspiration from the people that we're talking to and suggest other people to showcase on this podcast and bring their story to the world. Thank you.
Thank you.